Welcome to the Inside Silverstone podcast, a business-focused podcast covering all things tech, engineering and innovation. Hosted by me, Chris Broome, a huge tech, motorsport and gaming fan, and also the owner of Longhurst, a firm of lifestyle financial planners and independent financial advisors located in Silverstone, Northamptonshire. This is a series of unscripted and unpolished conversations with leading business owners, thought leaders and high-tech talent where we discuss their experiences within the Silverstone business and motorsport region. We will also be asking them to share their knowledge, insight and their thoughts on the future just for you. If you're looking to learn more about the Silverstone high growth region and commercially connect with like-minded peers, you've definitely come to the right place. Welcome to Inside Silverstone. Welcome to the next edition of Inside Silverstone. My name is Chris Broome and I am your host. Today I am delighted to welcome Tom Haywood to the show, who is an investment manager at the Foresight Group. Tom, welcome to the show.
Great, thanks Chris.
Tom, as is customary, as I always start off the show, I'd love to quickly run through a quick education and career snapshot, if that's okay, just so I can basically highlight sort of what you're a master in and why I thought it would be important to bring you on the show. So is it okay if I quickly run through that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I'm going to split this into two. So education, I'm going to run through, and I think with career, I think I'm going to actually ask you to explain it. But with education, you've got an MBA from the London Business School. You've also got a master's in biodiversity conservation from Oxford University, and you are also a chartered financial analyst. So for the benefit of our wonderful listeners, can you just explain what a chartered financial analyst is?
Yeah, sure. So I took those exams whilst I was doing investment banking at Deutsche, and it's a set of three quite painful, long exams. It takes, I think they suggest about 250 hours of learning for each. Yep. But the idea is at the end of it, you're able to do, I guess, hopefully similar roles to what you're doing with Longhurst, in that you're able to assess and plan someone's financial position going forward.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so from a career perspective, started at Deloitte as an accountant for 1 or 2 years, and then there's been sort of a wonderful journey, as I've sort of read it, which is sort of seeing you end at Foresight Group as an investment manager. So again, for the benefit of the listeners, can you just sort of explain your sort of career path and sort of what you've done and what you've enjoyed doing?
Yeah, sure. So I had a real job when at Deutsche, and that ended in 2011 when I wanted to go to Oxford to do that master's. And then over that period, over a period of kind of 5 years or so, I was predominantly involved in startups and venture capital before I ended up at Foresight. So the first company I co-founded, a company called Purify, which makes a biotech manufacturing reagent. Effectively, what it does is it creates a filter that purifies cancer drugs at 25% lower cost than existing solutions.
Wow.
So we that was co-founded with two friends from university who did biochemical engineering, and one of which had a PhD focused on that particular area.
Okay. And
so we commercialized it, spun it out of UCL, where it was invented and created, raised money from Imperial Innovations, and then it sort of took off in that direction.
Wow.
I left the company shortly after the raise and was focused on the MBA, and then looking to move into kind of more environmental venture capital, because my passion's more in the environment. And that's sort of what led me into working at Eco Machines and then managing one of their portfolio companies, then ultimately to Foresight, which is quite a strong alignment of my values of interest in helping the environment as well as growing small businesses.
And what I read on your LinkedIn bio, something to do with O2.
Yes, so I was running the a connected car company, which I guess was the start of my interest in mobility, and hence the STC, why I'm here today.
Yeah.
And I I moved to O2 to help build their connected car product. I realized the consumer product we were trying to create would be better off with the sort of the backing of a much larger player, and that quite a large amount of the product is fairly homogenous, so it is more of a brand play. And so I was working there to help build their consumer connected car product, which I believe is still under development and hopefully should be released soon.
There we are. And then sort of natural progression ended up, as you said, in line with your values at the Foresight Group.
Yes.
So for those that haven't heard of Foresight or want to know a little bit more, who are Foresight and what do you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So Foresight manages about £3 billion under management. 2.5 billion of that is in infrastructure, so predominantly solar and wind. It has an international footprint, so it's not just in the UK, but also Italy, Australia, Korea, and small presence in the US. And the other £500 million is managed under what we broadly call private equity. And private equity side can be split into 4 specific areas: impact funds, venture funds, private equity funds, and debt.
Okay.
In the private equity is a mixture of buyout and growth capital. Relevant to STC members, I think, our impact fund, in particular the Midlands Engine Investment Fund, and then also the venture fund, which is the Foresight Williams EIS fund.
Okay,
well.
So can we start with the first, so the impact fund? So what are you guys focusing on there?
So it's a government initiative whereby lots of money has been invested in the Midlands Engine as a kind of the equivalent of the Northern Powerhouse Fund, in order to boost grow companies and boost jobs in this area. Foresight manages the East Midlands pot of money, which includes the Silverstone Tech Cluster, and also looks at Milton Keynes and sort of down to Luton, this sort of area as well. It goes all the way up, up to the north, like Lincolnshire, around there. Okay. We typically invest from that fund investments of 250,000 up to 1.5 million. Okay. But usually sort of smaller checks first in order to see how they're going, and it's completely sector agnostic. It could be any type of company. We've invested in all manner of different companies. And so for most people at the STC or in the area in general, that would be the most appropriate fund to start with, I would think. And
what's the sort of profile? I know that you're agnostic on the potential industry or what they're doing, but what's the sort of typical company profile, or at least the sort of baseline that you would then consider?
Yeah, so we've done university spin-outs. Pre-revenue companies that are looking to scale. Yeah. I guess predominantly from an investor, most investors will say they'd want to see some form of traction, some kind of revenues to prove that the product works and exists. But then if it's very IP rich and heavy, then that could be considered separately too. So if a company is wanting to scale up and grow and wants to consider equity investment as an option for that, then definitely that fund is worth considering.
And how do you meet these companies? So where's the sort of dots being connected?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a lot of meeting of corporate finance advisors, and then a lot of events in and around the area. Okay. And then broadly it's around network. It's one of the funny things, we sort of touched on. I was on the other side of the table as an entrepreneur before, and I always found it really frustrating trying to find out who would invest in my company. Now I'm on the other side of the table. I find it sort of frustrating finding the companies, because it's quite hard to know all the companies who are trying to raise. Yeah. So some are very high profile and really proactive in the marketing. Others are, I guess, a bit more reticent or not as visible, even though they may be an incredible business. So it's sort of it's a balance, I think, between going out, meeting as many people as you can, but clearly you can never meet enough people.
Yeah, and I presume obviously having a decent sort of group of professional partners such as banks and presumably solicitors, so the likes of EMW, STC board member, Barclays, STC board member, presumably doing collaborative events with them and working alongside some of their sort of households and business owners. That's probably a decent route into meeting them.
Yeah, definitely. And EMW and Barclays in particular have been very good with that. So EMW holds various events for stage companies. Barclays is very well connected in the region as well.
EMW, I know Kirsty runs them, Kirsty Simmons, so getting investment ready, I think is the sort of phrase that they use. So, okay, so you've sort of touched on the word private equity. And so again, just for the benefit of those that might not know what the sort of phrase means, what is private equity? Yeah,
so it's a bit of a loose term, I guess, or loosely applied here, but effectively it is using equity investment to either grow or buy out a company, I'd say. Predominantly of interest to your members, our funds would provide equity to scale up and grow a company rather than buy them out. And that's its role. So it's a way of providing liquidity and finance for unlisted companies.
Okay. And so presumably your role is as a private equity investment manager, and so sort of from start to finish, how would you bolt into a business? So how would it work from initial sort of introduction through maybe a professional partner or meeting somebody at a networking event? What happens after that first meeting?
Yeah, so usually companies know they're wanting to raise funding rather than us asking them, do you want some money? Let's work on a business plan. So how that would manifest itself is, let's say a company is making 100,000 pounds net profit a year, and it really wants to scale and grow up, but it wants to kind of benefit from expertise of people who have done that before, or it doesn't want to take on debt because the business doesn't want the personal guarantee for whatever reason, and that is the point where we would be engaged to kind of discuss what that would look like. So often in terms of how it would manifest itself, an individual would send me or Foresight an email or meet me at an event and give me a card and say, this is my business plan, this is what I'm looking to achieve. There's a kind of a funding hole of, let's say, £500,000 or £1 million. We want to use that funding amount to develop X product and grow it, or increase the number of salespeople so that we can build and scale, grow our top line more quickly than we can now.
And so it's going to seem like obviously an obvious statement, but the importance of having a good business plan, an articulate one that's clear, well written, with accurate numbers, is presumably critical at that stage. And again, presumably you occasionally see business plans that aren't like that.
Often see business plans that aren't like that, which can be hard, but you will, or the way I always work with businesses is just try and shape their business plan so that it is kind of investable. I think my one suggestion to all people is to look at Guy Kawasaki's 10 slides you need to have in order to pitch to a venture capitalist. And that is a pretty fail-safe way of having just the 10 kind of key points you need to look at to build a plan.
And presumably, is that something that can be located online?
Yeah, just go Google it,
Fine. So presumably if you gave that link to me, we can include it in the show notes.
Yes.
So people listening to this can literally just go onto the podcast episode show notes and click through.
Yeah, exactly. Because there are certain things that, may or may not be so obvious, but, having, I guess, been in this world for several years, it seems fairly obvious to me now, but I can remember when starting it was maybe a bit nebulous as to what an investor is looking for.
Of course. Well, if you're a master in designing some form of tech or whatever, you might not be specifically a master in producing a business plan. So and so presumably once an investor sort of shows you that business plan, if it needs enhancing, to be sort of diplomatic with the words and polite, if it needs enhancing, you'll work with them to make that more investor ready. before you then potentially present that to obviously equity partners.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I guess the business has to be within the scope of the fund, and we have to kind of believe the ambition and on what's going to happen at a high level.
Sure.
But then if we feel there is something there, then we'll work with the company to achieve that, to become kind of investment ready.
Okay, and then just to continue down the sort of journey from meeting to presentation of the sort of business plan, what then happens after that? So you've got the business presentable. You believe in them, they believe in you, and collectively on the journey. What then happens?
So once we've kind of gone around it a few times and we've got a good deck and a good financial model in place that we believe, we'd then take it to our, we would negotiate effectively what a broad offer would look like, and then take them to our investment committee, which involves the senior partners at Foresight, and then a decision would be made on whether to invest in that company after that, or if there are a few tweaks that need to be made or some more things that our investment committee would like to find out.
Yeah.
So then we'd go away and do that work, and then once it's sort of got approval, we'd then start a process of due diligence on the company to make sure that what they're saying is actually true. And so it's mostly confirmatory, and then at the end of that process, we'd have a final investment committee just to sign off and say, this is fine, and then
Investment's made,
and then we would usually take a board seat, depending on the investment, and often appoint a chair as well, and presumably,
but by sitting on the board and potentially nominating a chair, the individuals that are selected to do that will hopefully have an understanding or a specialism potentially in that sector or that service or the solution or product.
That's exactly right. The chairs we select, and there are some chairs we've worked with who are seasoned chairs who are just very, very good at being chairs.
And are these, sorry to interrupt, are these people that actually work for Foresight or people externally who are known to Foresight and part of the external family?
Yeah, so often these they're all externals, and as a chairman they all have to be independent as well.
Yes.
So they invariably will maybe have a couple of portfolio companies with Foresight. They may have a couple of portfolio companies with other private equity houses.
Yeah.
It's people who have had very successful careers who are now turning into portfolio career, and they'll have 6 or 7 board seats and sit on various companies, and those tend to be the more experienced and best chairs.
Yes.
And we obviously have various chairs that we've worked with over the years that we would like to use again
and trust.
But if not, we can work with recruiters or recommendations on getting other chairs in.
Okay, and so investments made, chairs appointed. Then what happens? Presumably you guys are still involved. You are still clearly working in partnership alongside that business to ensure the investment is successful and utilised, and that you're on hand to provide assistance, I guess. How's that work?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I mean, we after investment we have a 100-day plan review. Okay. So effectively, tying up all the loose ends of DD, things that came out that need resolving.
Yeah.
And then we sort that out and bring them back into Foresight to present to our committee again. And then beyond that, we attend monthly board meetings and keep on track with the business and see if it's performing.
Yeah.
Often there'll be calls outside the formal board meetings to keep so that we're updated, or if there are any issues that the CEO or CTO or FD or whoever wants to communicate, that we can work through that. And then there's also a line as well to the chairman as well.
Fine.
So the idea is, we are completely aligned with the management team in terms of how we're trying to build and grow their business.
Yeah.
And it's very much a collaborative process there.
And years down the line, once you've sort of gone down the runway path, as it were, is there then a point where the equity manager, the investment house, will then look for an exit? to presumably for your business, your commercial, for it's obviously recover investment plus, but then to have sort of left the business in a a wonderful, beautiful position where it can then continue to flourish, but potentially without you guys there anymore because you're not needed.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the sort of the main goal of private equity is to invest at a low price and then sell out at a higher price once value has been created.
Of course.
And that's something for potential companies to consider when raising private equity, is that we would always require an exit and to achieve liquidity on our position. So if you're running a lifestyle business or you don't have plans on kind of growing and scaling to the stars, then a private equity venture capital investment wouldn't necessarily be right for that business. So after we'd usually aim to exit between 3 and 7 years, I guess, depending on the company. And that process could either be an inbound inquiry from a strategic, a company looking to make a strategic acquisition, or we could appoint a corporate finance advisor to facilitate a more formal process. So, but in any event, we would need to achieve liquidity at some point once we feel that the value we've created as much value in that company is.
That makes sense. And so you used a good phrase there, which I think we should expand on for those that are listening. So a lifestyle business. So what would be your definition of what a lifestyle business is, and why that wouldn't necessarily fit with what we're talking about here?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think so. Lifestyle businesses would be a business, often you'd see a consultancy whereby you're providing your work for a certain fee, and you might have a few other employees, but it's one that you're happy to kind of tick over in the background. You don't want to grow it rapidly or scale it to the stars, and therefore you also probably don't really need private equity investment in that company. That investment is only really needed if a company wants to really scale and grow fast. So it wants to take on a certain amount of funding, let's say 500,000, to hire in more technical developers to build a new product, or hire more business development staff to really push on the sales front, or invest it in online marketing or whatever it may be, but to really push the growth of the company. However, the quid pro quo is that on taking the investment, you are then subject to more strict governance controls.
Sure.
Expect.
Yeah.
The investors have requirements as well, just like as if you were taking a loan from Barclays or whoever. So I think it's definitely a question that a company should consider before taking investment, whether they want their business to go down that route, or are they just happy for it to tick over in a nice way as it would be doing today.
Okay, great answer, thank you. EIS, so you mentioned earlier that certainly for yourself, your focus at the moment is the Foresight William EIS. So again, for those that are listening that haven't heard of the analogy EIS, or just want to understand a little bit more, what is an EIS?
Yeah, sure. So EIS stands for Enterprise Investment Scheme, and it's a brilliant initiative which enables investors to invest in early stage companies and receive income tax relief on their investment at a high level. There are various other tax reliefs you can get, such as capital gains and loss relief, and you know this better than me. I mean, I think if inheritance tax as well. Yeah. So it's very useful for financial planners such as yourself to provide this product as part of a mixed portfolio. From the investor point of view, from our point of view, it's great because it enables us to raise decent amounts of money for early stage companies in the UK. And this is great because I think EIS and SEIS, which is a similar scheme but for earlier stage investments, are a great way of getting lots of capital to early stage companies. And for me, it's the best in the world. I mean, lots of other countries look on us with envy, which is why you see lots of government announcements around kind of doubling down on that and making sure these reliefs continue because it's really driving a lot of jobs and growth in the UK.
Yeah. And how? So if I run a business, I own a business, how do I benefit from EIS? So, and how would I benefit from your fund? I guess so. What's the outcome there?
Well, do you mean as an individual, I guess, or
no? So it's presumably the fund is going to be used to sort of invest into.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
STC businesses as an example.
Yeah, exactly. So each EIS fund is different. So the Williams EIS fund in particular focuses on what we kind of call deep technology businesses, often with a hardware mechanical engineering angle, because that plays into Williams Advanced Engineering's expertise. So our kind of USP is that we are a financial EIS fund, but we benefit from a partnership with Williams Advanced Engineering, who are able to assess technology and say whether it's groundbreaking or not by tapping into their 300 engineers on site, and also leverage their connections within the automotive space as well. So those are sort of key criteria. They need to be quite IP rich. There needs to be a lot of deep technology in the company for us to invest. Many of the STC members would fit that bill.
And so, taking it back to how you eloquently explain the sort of journey that a business would go on to potentially seek funding, at point of the investment committee making a decision on, yes, this is a business we want to sort of support, if it then fitted the Williams EIS fund, presumably the funding would then come from there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so Foresight as a whole has quite a strict allocation policy as to which company would fit which fund, and whoever you speak with at Foresight invariably will get sent around the whole team, and it will be decided as to what sort of investment it is.
Yeah,
I think the Williams EIS fund is definitely different to a lot of them because of that kind of that technological focus, which the other ones don't necessarily have. So we would never invest in the Williams EIS fund would never invest in, a cafe or an e-commerce retailer, whereas the impact fund I was talking about earlier, the Midlands Engine Impact Fund, may do that. So there are quite clear lines, although it may look like it's kind of separate pots of money and maybe the same thing. There are quite distinct areas of investment for each fund.
And the beauty with this is that as a private investor, certainly if they're working alongside a financial planner, as you sort of mentioned earlier, and certainly if they're of a certain sort of wealth level and also a sort of tax position level, i.e. they've got tax issues because they're higher earners, if they like technology and they want to potentially invest part of their pot in something that is of interest to them, which also gets great tax breaks, they can invest into the Williams EIS fund.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we...
which presumably, just to stop there, would have a pool of tech businesses that you've selected, so clearly diversifying risk and also investing into a wider range of very interesting bits of tech and businesses.
Yes, so to get a bit more technical on that, we're an unapproved EIS fund as opposed to an approved EIS fund. That means your money is invested on an ad hoc basis as we invest in a company, rather than investing in sort of the whole fund, which then invests in companies. So that means you benefit from loss relief. It also means that the money is kind of drip fed into companies as we invest in those companies. Yeah,
good, excellent. Fine. So we've covered off education background, career background, a bit of entrepreneurialism, what Foresight Group do, what private equity is, EIS, relationship with the STC. So when did you guys join the Silverstone Technology Cluster? Can you remember?
We joined it last year. I can't remember which month, but we've always been quite involved. I mean, personally, I've been involved heavily in the Milton Keynes area since we were awarded the Midlands Engine Fund about this time last year. It's about March last year when we started really kind of going being proactive with finding companies in the area. And then building our presence in the area. We've had various meetings and met came at roles at various events, and it seemed like a natural place that we should be a member of, given not just the ambition of the Midlands Engine Fund, but also the Williams EIS Fund.
And have you, presumably, attending events, you've got to meet some of the businesses on site?
Yes, we have. I can't say too much more about ones that we're looking at investing in, but we are
having conversations.
Yeah, we are having conversations, and the SIG events, are the special interest group events, are a great way to meet all the businesses as well.
Yeah.
And we've had several conversations with several of the members about investment already. Great,
and long may that continue. I'm really keen to understand a little bit more about you. So you clearly have a passion for, as you've said, the sort of conservation and focus on a clean future, presumably.
Yeah.
What was the sort of, but also tech in general, clearly. Can you remember sort of what the genesis for that was as a child? Were you always interested in sort of tech or conservation? Where's this come from?
Yeah, it all happened probably around a similar time frame, actually. I mean, I can trace back my interest in tech to when I was about 7 years old, and we were living in South Africa at the time, in Johannesburg, because my dad was a diplomat.
Wow.
And we had an Atari 520 STE.
Yeah.
And my dad had a Macintosh SE, the old, that was from, I think, 1989, that was. And I just loved video games. Loads, so I played an absolute ton of video games on the Atari, and then that kind of evolved into a PlayStation. So I was always interested around tech. I kind of wish my granddad bought that computer for us so that we would learn to code, because he thought it'd be the future. Sadly, I didn't do any of the coding because I didn't know what to create, as it were. I didn't have that kind of creative spark in me then, and so never learned that. Which is a shame, as I wish I had. My dad really wanted me to when I was like 14, 15 as well. Yeah. So that's where the tech side came from, and I've always been kind of a futurist. I think part of it, I mean, with Macintosh, Macs in the early days as well, it was always a kind of if you owned, the PowerBooks or the computers pre-iMac, it was quite a close-knit community of people who are quite interested in tech.
Yes. And
what I think they've done very well is they maintained that.
Yes.
As well, like keeping the focus on Unix back and all this kind of stuff. So that's quite, I quite like that about Apple, and I think that's kind of always kept me interested in tech.
Yeah. And is there, always like thinking this, is there any sort of tech that currently doesn't exist that you wish sort of did exist, or you hope in the future does exist?
Well, I mean, the obvious one is autonomous cars. I mean, I wish that was around tomorrow. But I think the main reason why is because that's just going to unlock so many areas. And I know it's a bit of a generic answer, but here we're at the STC, so clearly that's going to be the key mobility revolution.
Sure.
But I was even thinking on the way in, as I saw a park and ride and one of the stations driving in today.
Yeah.
That you think, gosh, actually, you probably wouldn't need that in future. You'd have to have separate autonomous vehicle car parks, because people would just be dropped off continuously. No one would actually have to park.
Yeah. And
so where would you put these? As I was looking out of the hills of the Midlands, thinking, where would these car parks be put? And I think the key thing for that, for me personally, is that autonomous cars will massively improve the quality of life of old people right now.
Yes.
It really will help facilitate mobility, and they can live wherever they want to.
Not even just old people, it's people with disabilities, it's people that potentially without financial means, that are struggling, people potentially going for job interviews that can't afford to get there as such. I mean, the scope from this, we had Sally Povaletsky on sort of episode 4 or 5 from season 1, and so the conversation there was all about this. It was just you're going to enable and empower people to hopefully just move forward and enhance.
That's exactly right.
Really powerful stuff. Right, Tom, we're 32 minutes into the interview. I think I'm going to sort of start bringing it to a close. So the last sort of 2 questions that I always ask. So the first one is, all around embarrassing mistakes. I love making my guests squirm, but I think more importantly, I think it's important to be able to laugh at ourselves, right? Because sometimes we just make stupid decisions that hopefully are sort of a key learning point that we don't sort of make again, as it were.
Yeah.
So is there anything in Tom's locker, something professional, something personal, that you would be prepared to share not only with our listeners, but also potentially your colleagues who will be listening to this?
Sure. Well, I'll leave all the non-PG rated stuff for a drink later.
Oh, really?
On.
Okay, fine.
I think the most bizarre recent memory, and it's sort of Milton Keynes related, is that I was at the Transport Systems Catapult meeting various companies.
Yeah.
As they were coming in to present, give us their business plan, present, say, hi, I'm so-and-so from X company, this is what we're trying to do. I'm saying, oh, great. Sit down, talk for an hour about the pitch. Some chap walked in and just plunged into, hey, nice to see you again. And immediately I was like, oh, nice to see you again, although I couldn't remember ever meeting him. And then just launched into, we're looking to change the world in X way. I thought, okay, fine. And so he started launching into what he was talking about. He didn't put any slides up on the screen. And I was just taking notes assiduously. And it was about 20 minutes in, I'm thinking, I don't know this guy's name. I actually don't even know the company's name. But we're now so far in, it'd be really embarrassing to ask. So I didn't ask, and we just carried on. Another 20 minutes passed. And then I'm like, oh, oof, I've actually got to catch my train now. But nice to meet you, and we'll be in touch. And you sort of found it out. And so I made all these notes on my Surface, and then looked at the headline. Like, I just had no title for him or the company. So embarrassing. I don't know who he was or his company.
And so I guess the key lesson, the key lesson there for any potential, business owners, ensure when you're talking to a potential, equity investment manager or otherwise, or any other professional advisor, make sure you introduce yourself, even if you recognise them and you think that they may remember you. Make sure you give them a business card, introduce yourself and the business before you then go into reciting your pitch.
Yeah, exactly. When shaking someone's hands, tell them what your name is.
Yes.
Not a bad start.
Not a bad start. Oh, wow. Okay, great story. Last question. We know now, because of work that the Silverstone Technology Cluster are doing with Gaia Innovation. So Gaia Innovation are a fantastic sort of organisation that are connecting local businesses with local schools and colleges to help from sort of year 9 up to sort of sixth form understand more about career progression and potentially to get involved in technology and innovation. So we know we've got some of the schools listening. So what I'm asking in season 2 is the last question before I let you go, Tom, is, clearly academically and technically a master in your field and going to have a phenomenal career moving forward, whatever it is that you end up doing within Foresight and otherwise. But there would have been a time when you were a lot younger where you potentially weren't sure what the sort of journey was going to be, and you were learning along the way. And so if you took yourself back to a place where you're a little bit more naive and a little bit more green and wet behind the ears, as it were, what one bit of advice would you give yourself?
Sure. So I think it's around, the bit of advice is around career and choosing career. And I think for me, that manifests itself in 2 ways after a mistake I made. Because I went into investment banking because A, I like sort of finance numbers, and B, I thought it would make me very rich and I could retire early.
Right.
I joined in the financial crisis, and I think 2 weeks into, because I started in 2008, a couple of weeks into the job, everything went belly up. So
sure.
Didn't quite work out on any metric.
Okay.
But now I think of it in terms of the way I guess I would as a VC investor, which is about product market fit. So firstly, A, what do you enjoy doing? And then B, what do people say that you're good at, both your teachers and your friends and family around you? And then try and combine the two of what you think you're good at and what you enjoy doing and what people tell you you're good at, and trying to find a career. I think one piece of advice someone always gave is that you will be you can be wealthy or successful in whatever you do as long as you kind of really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because the people I see doing better now than and who are happiest now are ones who work in a job where it's not work.
Yes.
It's something they're doing in their free time anyway.
Yeah. So find something that you're good at, find something that you're passionate about, and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Tom, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about the Foresight Group and what you guys do. Hopefully, we're going to be running some mastermind sessions in due time, which is where we're going to be speaking with other professional advisors about certain sort of topics and subjects. So be delighted if we could bring you on that.
Great, looking forward to it.
Tom, thank you. The Inside Silverstone podcast is produced by the team at Longhurst for the benefit of those with a passion for all things tech, engineering and innovation. For more information, please visit longhurst.co.uk/Inside Silverstone, whilst also remembering to give us a 5 out of 5 star rating on iTunes. Please note that neither Chris Broome or Longhurst work for Silverstone Park, Silverstone Circuit or Silverstone Technology Cluster.